Hey guys, this is Warwick from Casual Chess, back for another 5-minute game today. Looks like I'm playing white as against an opponent from the United States. He's a bit more highly ranked than I am, so I'm going to play an opening I'm pretty comfortable with, the Queen's Gambit declined. Reasonable start here in development. I don't usually like that c5 move, but we'll see where this leads us. I'll play Nf3. Fairly comfortable with the development at the moment. Not optimal, but this is fine. I was expecting that move there. Now Queen A4. I think we can dig into this game fairly easily now. Hoping to get a couple more pieces off the board. Waiting quite a while for my opponent to make his move here. Okay, B takes on D7. I'll get those queens off the board there now. Castles. Now he's got his king into the center of the board, which is neither bad nor good for me at the moment. I'll look to play now a move like knight to b6, which will be a fork on his rook and king. I'm prevented from doing that, but I'll instead play Ba5, which will protect my move to the b6 square. I'll be able to move there with check, but he's dropped back a little bit, that's fine. In that case now, rook Fd1. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll play Nb6, and then knowing that he will probably drop knight back there. Okay. Not what I was expecting actually. Either way, I think I'll play b4, which defends the bishop on the a5 square. And we'll now play a4, which traps that rook in there, so he'll be forced to sacrifice a piece. Okay, I'll play b5. Now I'm expecting A takes b5, and then I was potentially going to play a5. Although I think I'll retake now, because if I play a5 it gives him the opportunity to play fairly defensively. Now I'm just looking at the scorecard here and I'm actually seeing that my opponent's got an advantage. I don't see how this happened. Rightio, that's how it happened. I guess not paying enough attention for me this morning. Play something like f4, looking to disrupt those E and D pawns. Somehow. Maybe even open up that E file, which would be good. Two pawns down is not impossible to come back from. And I see now my mistake. Obviously too little too late, but nonetheless, good to know. I'm going to drop back to a6 now with my rook that was on a7, just pinning that bishop to the d6 square, unless the king is moved. Okay, so this was all expected so far. Hoping now to play h3 so that I've got an option for my king to flee to h2 if necessary. Okay, so my opponent closes down that center there, which is fine by me. So I think what I'll do is I will ignore the fact that my opponent can play rook b3, and I'll play rook c1 instead, looking to pile up there on the d6 square. Okay. I will in fact go rook cc6, meaning that that knight is going to have a hard time removing itself from the e8 square where it currently defends the bishop. Okay, so our position is not too bad at the moment. My opponent is 2 pawns worth up. He plays check. This was to some degree expected. Now I'm wondering whether I should flee to h2 or whether I should try and protect the e3 pawn, and I think I'll try and protect the e3 pawn. Again, expected. And I can potentially just move back and forth on this f1 and f2 square, or even the e2 square and the f1 square if necessary, to protect both that pawn on g2 and the pawn on e3. Obviously my opponent has the advantage, but to actually turn that into a concrete advantage might be difficult for them. Okay, so we'll move between the f1 and e2 squares. My opponent drops back, and this is an opportunity now for me to actually take, and upon retake, take again, lining up on that d6 square. And I think my opponent's played an error there. He obviously meant to drop back to b5. I feel a bit bad about that, so I'm going to offer him a draw. I don't think that was his intention. Okay, so obviously what could have happened there is I simply took that piece, and really we don't need to play this out any further. That's a game win for me. But obviously what he meant to do was, rather than drop back to b6, drop back to b5, defending that pawn there. This would make it much harder for me to, I suppose, get in and then stay in the game. I think probably my move next would be something like g4, so that if retakes, I've got some connected pawns here, 4 on 3. The alternative would be after something like g4, check, rook h2, in which case I would simply play rook takes d5, after takes again, and then potentially something like this. Now we've got a 3 on 3 in those pawns. Now I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked out, but that's my idea. We'll run the analysis now, and I'll be back with that in just a moment. Okay guys, we're back with the analysis now. So as you can see in the top right hand corner, my opponent's accuracy 79.8 versus mine 84.7. Obviously the result was a draw because I offered a draw after this blunder here, playing his rook back to b6 instead of what I think was intended, b5. And checking out the graph below here, you can see he did have the advantage for much of the game there. In fact, as many as 8 pawn advantage at one stage. So not great for me, but I just thought it was right to actually offer the draw in that circumstance. It was obvious to me that this was an error for him. Initially we played okay. I would say we were down, well, until about here we were quite equal on this move, which was that was move 19, rook b5. Now after this I blundered by playing a4 rather than dropping back, which is the correct move. That is dropping back the knight to a4. But what I was looking at was trapping this rook here on the b5 square and forcing him to take something to flee. Of course he can simply just take on b6, and then when retakes with that bishop, if retakes, he's got yet another rook aiming at that square, taking right. So not much more to say really with that one today. We had a little bit of an up and down game at the start. I did play some inaccuracies, but that's fine. Probably didn't even play my own Queen's Gambit declined very well. So be it. And we did have a big error right here. That was a4, something to learn from. But my opponent had a bigger error still, playing back there, Queen f8. That's a missed win actually for him, because it allows retaking on d6, retakes again, and then of course it all fell apart there with rook b6, but that was an error, so we won't hold that against him. Not too bad a game for today, but obviously some improvements to be made. This a4, that's just situational awareness and position rather than getting wrapped up in my own ideas. Simple enough to work on, and that's what I'll be working on in the coming few days. Alright guys, well I will catch you in the next one, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a like. If you didn't, that's okay, please let me know what I could do to improve, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.